I'm gonna show you guys today how I gained almost 100 FPS going from the default recommended settings from Activision to our new optimized settings in Nvidia Control Panel, in Windows, in game settings, as well as a config file. So let's get into it. We'll go ahead and minimize these. We're going to go ahead and launch the game. The first thing you want to do is run a benchmark to see where your numbers are at from the start, right? Before we can do that, though, a couple settings you want to change. You're going to go to the graphics tab. From here, you're going to want to scroll down and make sure your frame rate is in unlimited mode to make sure that you're getting as many frames as absolutely possible during the benchmark. So you want to have that set there. The other thing you want to do, this isn't necessary for the benchmark, but just something a lot of people don't know about or have missed. You're going to want to go to the interface tab, or you can get to it from here. Go to interface. We're going to scroll down and look for telemetry. It's going to be towards the bottom. This will show you different, as you can see on the top, you can see my FPS, my latency, packet loss, GPU temp, all that kind of stuff. So you can turn those on manually, see what you want, but I know a lot of people don't know about that, so I just want to show that before the benchmarking and go there. But from there, once you have it on unlimited, you're going to want to go ahead and run a benchmark. A lot of people don't know where to find that. So at the main menu right at the start, you're going to want to scroll down until you see the three games. You're going to see Modern Warfare 2, which you have to be able to benchmark. So you're going to want to click on that game. Once it loads in, you're going to scroll down one time, and you'll see on this top bar, you'll see private match with a little arrow. The benchmark is kind of hidden back there. So you'll click on that. You'll pull up the benchmark tab here. It's really simple to run. You hit start, it'll start connecting, and it'll count down a run. It takes about 90 seconds to get through the benchmark. And then it'll come up and pop on the screen your results. I'm not going to go ahead and do it because I already got my results, as you guys saw. But that's what you're going to want to do first before you change any settings, just to kind of see where you're at right now and then see what the result is afterwards. But we're going to go ahead and close out of the game now. After you've ran the benchmark, you want to close out completely. And the first thing we're going to do is the Nvidia Control Panel settings. If you don't have an Nvidia GPU, these settings are not going to be relevant to you. There could be AMD equivalent settings. I just don't have an AMD card, so I don't know what those settings would be. But for Nvidia, these are the settings that I personally run myself. Doesn't necessarily mean they're the best. They're just what work for me and my system. So it's definitely something you can try. But these are pretty default settings. So everything is usually just by default. So the only things I really change, make sure low latency mode is on. You can turn on ultra if you run G-Sync, but most people don't end up running that. Speaking of G-Sync, you're going to want the monitor technology. You're going to want that on fixed refresh rate. Again, unless you're running G-Sync, but the settings are going to be different for that. Everything else should be pretty much default scrolling down through here. One thing you can change is the texture filtering optimization. You're going to want to turn that on. So make sure that's on so that the texture filtering is optimized. Texture filtering quality, you're going to want to turn that to high performance as well to get a little bit more FPS there. Make sure the trilinear optimization is on as well. And then the last thing is just 100% make sure that the vertical sync is turned off. You definitely do not want to have that on. Adds in so much latency. Make sure you turn that off. I know a lot of people will change the power management mode from normal to high performance. But since we're still under global settings, I leave that to normal so that way your GPU isn't pegged all the time, even if you're not gaming. So the way to turn that on per program is to go into Program tab and add your game. So most games will automatically come in here. I have my Call of Duty already on here. But if you don't see it on there, you can add it. Search for it if you've played it recently, or you can browse your computer to find it. But it's just the COD.exe file for the Modern Warfare 2 game. And then from here, you're going to want to scroll down to the power management mode and make sure that is on prefer maximum performance. That way, when you're actually playing the game, and only while you're playing the game, your GPU will be completely maxed out using all of its performance that it can. So you're going to want to go ahead and go back here. I haven't changed any settings, so I don't have the little button, but there will be a little apply button down here at the bottom. You're going to want to go ahead and click apply before you move to the next tab. From there, we're going to go ahead to the change resolution tab. This is something that so many people forget, or it gets reset whenever you change your NVIDIA driver. So if you update to a new NVIDIA driver, sometimes this can change. So it's always important to double check this every so often to make sure you're getting all of your refresh rate. So you're going to want to make sure you click on the monitor that you're using for your gaming. I have two, but this is my main gaming monitor. Scroll down until you get to the PC tab, and make sure that it is set to your max refresh rate. A lot of times you'll get it will default up to one of these Ultra HD or to a different one, and you won't be able to get your 165 hertz or whatever your max refresh rate is. So make sure you click on that, click on your max refresh rate, and hit apply. So that way you have all of your settings there all set and ready to go. Then we're going to scroll down from here we're going to use the use NVIDIA color settings. From here, you can change your color output. I leave mine on 8 because I don't really notice the difference between 8 and 10. But some people like to change that. I just don't really see a difference. And then the other thing you want to change is make sure this is set to full instead of limited. And then also, I only have one option, but sometimes you won't have the highest bit color. So make sure you have 32-bit there. Go ahead and hit apply. Your screen's going to flicker a little bit, might turn black. That's fine. Just make sure you hit apply and everything should set. From there, we're going to go to the next desktop color settings. I don't go too crazy on these, but I know a lot of people do. Again, make sure you are clicked on your gaming display. This should default to 50%. I moved mine up to about 65 because I use this main monitor as my gaming setup as well as my main monitor for watching YouTube and any other content that I like to do. So I don't like to saturate my game too much. But if you want a little bit more vibrant colors, this is where you do it. It's in the color settings. So move that slider however you'd like based on your monitor. It's completely personal preference. And then hit that little apply button once you've done that. Then you can go down to the adjust video color settings down here at the bottom. Again, make sure you clicked on your display, choose the with NVIDIA settings, go to the advanced tab and make sure dynamic range is set to full and not limited. And then again, once that apply button shows up, hit apply and set your settings. That is everything that I do personally with the NVIDIA Control Panel. There are a couple other things you can do, but that's usually the quickest and easiest way to do it. Now for the Windows settings, you're going to want to go ahead and type in your type bar, or your search bar down here, view advanced display info. I've already typed it, so I have all my recent histories here. This is everywhere we're going to be going to change settings. But you'll just type in that to get to your advanced display options. You're going to want to make sure you click on your main gaming display. Mine is this one here. And this is just a double check 100% that you have your correct resolution, your correct refresh rate. And if it's not correct, make sure it's changed here. But all of this should have changed with the NVIDIA controls panel settings. But if you're on A and D, this is a good way to double check that all of your stuff is set correctly. From here, we're going to go ahead and hit the back arrow. With the back arrow, you're going to go to the standard display settings. We're going to scroll down. Make sure you're selected on your main gaming monitor. And we're going to scroll down and ignore my my 200% this so you guys can see it better, but make sure your display resolution is where it needs to be. And then you're gonna skip the advanced display. That's where we just were, and go to the graphics settings. This is kind of a controversial setting. Me personally, I always leave this on, mainly because I use many programs. I use many um, different games. I played many different games, stuff like that. This, from my experience, doesn't cause me any real issues. I'm sure there's a little bit performance to be had if you turn it off on some days and some patches of the game. But I leave it on 24/7, so that's really up to you. You test it, see how it feels on your personal game. So you can close out of that. Again, go to your little search bar down here. We're going to type in background apps, and it should pull up the screen. This is another thing that a lot of people forget about or don't even know about. But it's allowing your apps in the background to update essentially. So I turn these to all off. Most of these don't need permissions to run in the background, and they just take up resources. So just make sure those are all set to off. Go again to the search bar and type in startup apps. This is another thing a lot of people don't know about. This is where all of the apps will sit that you have installed that just want to run whenever you start the PC up. So if, like, for instance, I never use Cortana, so I don't ever want it running unless I click on it, which I never will. So this is the apps that are going to try and start up at startup. So make sure you go through here, turn off anything like Cortana or Epic Games Launcher, or if you see Steam or Overwolf for Minecraft, like anything that you don't want starting up with your PC and running all the time in the background, you turn it off. All these other things I have here, I need them on for everyday use that I keep on. Just make sure you turn off anything that isn't something that you want to run at the startup every single time and running in the background. Uh, the last setting we're going to do is for game mode. Something I'll note while we're here is make sure you are up to date on all your windows and all that kind of stuff. But go to game mode settings here. This is again one of those controversial settings. Again, I leave it on because it seems to work okay for me and all the other games I play. So I leave it on. Some people have better success with off. Again, something you're gonna have to try on your own and your own personal system to see how that goes. Xbox game bar on this tab up here. Make sure this is turned off. This will use quite a bit of resources and just cause some random stuttering and all that kind of stuff if it's running in the background. If you use it to clip stuff, record games, all that kind of stuff, obviously leave it on. But if it's something that you didn't even know about or don't even use, definitely make sure you turn this off because it does use some resources. Uh, so that is the last bit for the Windows. The next thing we're going to do is delete the actual config file for the game. I know that sounds a little weird and a little daunting, but it's extremely easy and does nothing to harm the system. You're just going to go into Documents, double click on Call of Duty, double click on Players, and then you'll see in the Players folder, there's a bunch of different files and folders in here. The one we're looking for is the options.3.cod22.cst. That's the file we're looking for. This is one we're going to delete. So we're going to single click on it and then right click on it. And we're going to go ahead and delete. And essentially what that's doing, and now it's gone completely from our system, or it's in our recycling bin. Essentially what that's doing is that's going to restart and reconfigure our config folder from the get-go, right? So it, in case it's corrupted or anything like that, that will get it completely out of the way, and we can, get a fresh start and not have any issues from the get-go when we're optimizing our settings. So once you restart the game, like I'm launching now in my Steam, it will also work on Battle.net the same. But once you delete that and relaunch the game, that file is going to come back into that folder, and we're going to actually adjust the settings in there a little bit later once we get through the actual settings here. One thing you're going to notice is these shaders are going to start optimizing. My system doesn't take too long to optimize these, but every system is different. Some will take a couple seconds like mine does. Some takes a couple minutes. You're definitely going to want to make sure the shader is optimized completely. It will go all the way up to 100%, and then it will disappear when it's ready to go. So you can just let that do it. It just won't let you do anything in game while that's doing that. You don't want to actually play a match when that's happening. But you can adjust settings and stuff while it's going there. So we'll go through and kind of explain what we want to do here. Most people want to have this on full screen exclusive. I usually play on borderless though, because when I stream and have all my tabs open, all that kind of stuff, it just makes it easier. Makes it easier tabbing in and out without causing any weird like black screens and stuff like that. So for the best FPS and latency, have it on full screen exclusive. But for me, like I said, in my situation, I run it on borderless and don't really notice too much of a difference. You're going to want to make sure dynamic resolution is off. All these should default. Your monitor, just make sure it's on your gaming monitor. Display adapter should be your graphics card. Just make sure these are set to your screen refresh rate and display resolution if you're on full screen exclusive. From here, dynamic resolution, turn that off. Aspect ratio should be automatic. VSync for both should be off. Again, make sure this is on back to unlimited. Since we deleted the config folder, it changed that, but make sure that's on unlimited. And then make sure your gamma is set to 2.2 if you're on a monitor. I think 2.4 is for TVs, but if you're on PC, you should definitely be on a monitor. Brightness is personal preference. We're going to go ahead and apply these. On the quality tab, we're going to change this to minimum, just automatically. Everyone's going to go ahead and set that to minimum, so we're all on the same playing field. Going to hit apply settings. From here, for my personal PC, my upscaling is set to image scaling by Nvidia. I do not want that. It is currently bugged right now, and if you choose anything else, it won't work for the first time. So you're going to want to hit off and then hit apply. Now we can actually choose our sharpening that we want, which is the Fidelity FX CAS. This will take up a little bit of FPS, but in my opinion, it's well worth it for the extra clarity that you see in game, because the game is extremely sharp and looks great. I personally have this at 100, but this one is personal preference on how sharp you want the game to look. But everyone I know pretty much runs that at 100. Anti-aliasing, this one is a setting, again, it's going to be based on personal preference, but this does have a little bit of FPS drop if you do go to Filmic. I personally prefer Filmic because the game actually looks better. And you can kind of see in these images, it's a little bit less fuzzy with that. But again, personal preference. If you have a little bit of FPS to spare, I highly recommend going on Filmic. If you're looking for as much FPS as possible, go to the standard non-Filmic. Same with this, move this down to low. If you're on 1080p, you can go to normal. It will affect FPS a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 FPS here or there. But I'm on 1440p, so I will have mine on low. Memory scale is completely up to you. It's completely PC and GPU dependent. I have 12 gigs of memory, so I do not need 85% of my VRAM setup. I know I need 65%. But if you're on like a 6 gig card, you might want to have this at 85 or 80. If you're on a 8 gig card, you might want to have it on like 70. So just look how much VRAM you have. And then you might actually have to go into game, and you see up here where it says VRAM usage. If you're actually in a game of Warzone after you've changed all your settings, just kind of see where the percentage is at. And just make sure it's like 5 or 10% above what your normal VRAM usage is in game. But for me personally, it's 65. But again, you don't want to go above 90 or below about 50%, depending again on how much VRAM you have. So Just go based off of that. Texture resolution, everything here should be pretty much at the lowest setting possible. Just to get the max FPS. If you want your guns and stuff to look better, you can change that. But this is all for max FPS. We're going to have all of this on low. This setting you can change to high. You'll lose a little bit FPS, but some of the trees and stuff in the distance won't look like blobs. Will actually render in. So if you want that to look a little bit better, set it to high, but you will lose a little bit FPS there. Everything else we're going to want short or very low or off. So we're going to turn persistent damage layers off. Shader quality, definitely want that on low. Tessellation off. Texture streaming off. Streaming quality we want to low. Volumetric low, off. Default. Again, continue down. Everything should be on low except for spot cache here. I recommend running on high or ultra. I have plenty of VRAM and plenty of GPU to run ultra. If you got a lower end GPU, you might want to run high, but I've never seen anyone really have issues with ultra. So high or ultra works there. Probably test it out yourself, see how it works. It just helps with stuttering in games and stuff like that. Particle lighting low, off on ambient occlusion, screen shadows, or screen space reflections off, static reflections off. Weather grids, this actually defaults to low for whatever reason. Just make sure it turns off. Depth of field, motion blur, all that kind of stuff, turn all that off. Film grain should all be off. We're going to go ahead and apply all those settings so everything should look roughly like mine. And then we're going to go to view. This is kind of personal preference. I run 120 FOV. I highly recommend if you are running above the default FOV that you change this to affected to help with visual recoil. And then I usually have my weapons to wide and my vehicles to wide. But the one setting that's really, really important is the first person camera movement. Make sure this is set to 50% and not 100 or 75. Make sure it's 50. It'll help a lot in gunfights. The last setting I highly recommend messing with. They actually moved it from the graphics settings for whatever reason. It's now in keyboard and mouse. So if you click on keyboard and mouse, you'll see Nvidia Reflex Low Latency. I usually have this on and boosted, and the main reason for that, if you read the description and kind of understand how it works, if you're in CPU-bound situations, which is essentially your CPU is struggling to keep up with the number of frames your GPU is outputting. So in those situations, which happens a lot on Warzone, you want to make sure your GPU is just full maxed out all the time, and so that the CPU is never waiting on the GPU essentially. Me personally, I find that boost works great for me. Other people find that on works best for you. I don't think anyone should have this turned off. I've never encountered a situation where you'd ever want that off. So either on or on and boosted. I prefer boosted, but that's up to you. So once that all is set, we should be done currently with the in-game settings. So from what we want to do here is we're going to go back to the graphics tab, back to the main display tab. We're going to scroll down to the restart shader optimization. We're going to go ahead and click that and then click restart. And then that's going to do the shader optimization once we finished all the other settings to make sure everything compiles properly. We're going to go ahead and close out of the game, close that down, and go into our actual game config file. I know this is daunting for some people, but it's extremely easy and nothing really to worry about at all. So you're going to go ahead and go to your file explorer, go to documents again. We're going to go into the Call of Duty tab again, players again, and back to that options.3.cod22.cst. If you've never opened a file like this before, you're going to right click on it. Well, you're going to single click on it and then right click and then open with, and you're going to click on Notepad and always use this app to open CST files and hit OK. Then it should open up into a giant window for whatever reason. I apologize. So it's going to open up into a huge file like this. And this is where we're going to go ahead and adjust those settings at. So these over here, tab out over to this pad here. These are the settings we're actually going to change. And the way to change these, there we go. That helps. The way we're going to change these is you can either scroll down and look for them individually, or you can type in here, press the control button on your keyboard while holding it. You press F and it'll pull up the find menu. You can type in the first one, which is going to be clutter max distance. You can just type clutter max and hit enter. And it should pull up. It's just out of frame. It should pull up here. It should automatically pull you down there. And you'll see the default setting from what we have set in the menu is 2500, but you can actually go all the way down to 100. So the best way and easiest way is to highlight the value we want to change. We're going to go ahead and copy that. Then we're going to go inside of the quotation marks. We're going to highlight the old value, and then we're going to paste it. So this value inside the quotation marks should match up exactly to what's next to the lowest value here on Clutter Max. I'm going to go ahead and close out of the find because the next one is just underneath it, which is the corpse's culling threshold. This one, you can see the default is 0.85. We're going to go ahead and copy the smallest value next to it, which is Control C, and go and highlight it and Control V, which is to paste. So now those values match exactly. The next one's going to be Sun Shadow Cascade. So you can actually scroll down. This one, I believe, is about halfway down. Yep, right here. So you can see the Sun Shadow Cascade by default is set to high 2x3 cascade. So we're going to expand this a little bit. We're going to copy the low option, Control C, inside of the bracket, inside of the comma, and inside of these quotation marks, we're going to highlight and replace it. So now you'll see again, it's an exact copy in between there to there. So we've changed that down. The next one, I gotta make this even wider here. The next one is for the texture filter. It defaults on low to 2x. We're actually gonna go to linear. You don't want to do nearest. Nearest is going to make your game look absolutely awful. So you definitely want to copy the linear option and replace the 2x option. So now, again, like we said, it's going to match exactly there. So that would be the texture filter. And the last one is actually at the very, very bottom here. And this is for the renderer worker count. Essentially what this is it's telling the CPU how many threads to use for your game. I went ahead and tested on an Intel CPU. I have never tested on AMD, so I unfortunately cannot give you any insights. If you have an AMD, this one you might have to test for yourself. But if you have an Intel CPU that is standard Intel CPU that doesn't have efficiency cores, it just has performance cores like an 11th, 10th, or 9th gen CPU, you can input some of these values. The way to find out what kind of CPU you have is you're going to go down to your taskbar. You're going to right click on your taskbar and click Task Manager. This will pop up your Task Manager. You're going to go ahead and click the Performance tab. From here, you'll click on the CPU tab, and you'll be able to see exactly what CPU you have. I have an Intel i9-10850K, and if you look down here towards the bottom, it will show you might have to hit more details. It will show you I have 10 cores and 20 threads, or logical processors. That's what threads are. So you want to match whatever yours has to whatever I have here. This is my tested values that I've tested on multiple CPUs and multiple configurations is what I found to be the best. I highly recommend double checking and like Googling your CPU and making sure. Let's say, for instance, I've seen this in the past. I have a 10850K, but I only have 8 cores and 16 threads here. I've seen that. One of my buddies had that situation. If you Google, you can tell that it's supposed to have 10 and 20, not 8 and 16. So you might have to change your BIOS if when you Google it, if your number of cores is not matching. But you should have the matching numbers there. So just check your CPU. This should work for most newer Intel CPUs, not the newest CPUs. Those might be trial and error. These might be good numbers. I've only tested some of the older ones, like the 11th, 10th, 9th, I think 8th gen as well. So you would input those values. So if we minimize this, for me, I have the 10 core, 20 thread. So I'm going to change this 9. I'm going to change it to a 7 because that is the tested value that I found to be the absolute best as far as average FPS as well as 1% lows. Again, if you had an 8 core, 16 thread, you would put a 6 here. 6 core, 12 thread, you'd put a 5 here, or 4 core, 8 thread, you'd put a 4 here if you have an Intel CPU with hyperthreading. And that's it. So that's really all you have to change. You'll see up here next to the file name, you'll see a little asterisk up there. You'll want to go ahead and hit File and then hit Save. When you hit Save, you'll see the asterisk is gone. That means that you've actually saved the document and it's there ready to go for when next time you launch the game. So you'll go ahead and close out of that, pull that out of frame, close out of this, and then you can go ahead and relaunch your game and go ahead and do another benchmark. You've finished all of the different settings to optimize your game. See what your changes are. Like I said, my back when I started, I was at 103 FPS, and I finished at 197 after I optimized it. So quite a big difference. Much better when it comes to. I mean, we tripled our 1% low FPS, so it is a huge game changer as far as smoothness and just overall experience in the game. Um, so give it a try, see how it works for you. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Again, as a reminder, let your shaders optimize before you run a benchmark or before you join a lobby or anything like that, because uh, it will this will hinder your FPS a lot, and you'll have a lot of problems. So make sure that finishes before you go. But again, any questions, leave it in the comments below. Follow me on Twitter. I stream on Twitch Monday through Friday. Sub to my YouTube. I should have more videos coming out real soon. I appreciate all the support, guys. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care.